Okay, and you are live.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our April 13th Community Services Advisory Commission meeting. So our first item after a call to order is if there's any public comments on items not on the agenda. Have you heard anything, Nick?
We haven't received any.
Okay. Moving on to the approval of the meeting minutes. Anyone have any comments about the meeting minutes? No? Do I have a motion to approve them?
I motion.
Who is that, Jim?
Mhm.
Need a second?
I can second.
Vic, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. We move on to the oath of office for reappointed members. And I'll turn it over to Chris.
Well, thanks, Steve. As I already mentioned, it is really good to be with you, and it's so nice to see your faces. I can't wait till we can do this in person. I think we should have like just a fun swearing in of everyone when we get to meet in person again, just as an excuse to be together. Or swear at 2020, maybe. I don't know. But so I will swear in the oath of office to Elizabeth first. So Elizabeth, if you want to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Elizabeth McLean.
I, Elizabeth McLean,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties as a member
the duties as a member
of the Community Services Advisory Commission
of
of the Community
the Community Services Advisory Commission
of the City of Dublin,
of the City of Dublin,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the State of Ohio,
and the State of Ohio,
and the ordinances and charter
and the ordinances and charter
of the City of Dublin, Ohio.
of the City of Dublin, Ohio.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I'll give you a virtual handshake. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are officially sworn in. And next I will, Mr. Steve. So Steve, if you want to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Steve Dritz,
I, Steve Dritz,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties as a member
the duties as a member
of the Community Services Advisory Commission
of the Community Services Advisory Commission
of the City of Dublin,
of the City of Dublin,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the State of Ohio,
and the State of Ohio,
and the ordinances and charter
and ordinances and charter
of the City of Dublin, Ohio.
of the City of Dublin, Ohio.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you all are off to a great start tonight. I'm sure you will have a fantastic meeting. If there's ever anything that we can do from a city council perspective, let us know. We so appreciate the work that you do. And, you know, I particularly really appreciated the opportunity to touch base with all of you when Kathy and I did a few months back. That is really valuable time for us. And, you know, it's a beautiful night, and you all could still be golfing if you weren't here. And we are so appreciative that you, in fact, are here. And it is a great work that you do for the city. Have a wonderful night, and we just can't thank you enough for what you do.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, go get them.
Okie dokie. With that being said, it's now time to turn over to Matt Ehrman, who's going to talk about our Parks and Recreation Master Plan update. It's all yours, Mark. or Matt, excuse me. Sorry.
Okay, first of all, I just want to make sure you all can see the screen.
Yes.
And second of all, is the audio okay? Is there reverb or anything on your end? We good? All right.
You're picking up well,
so I
Matt.
didn't have to go backwards and then back forward again for your sake, not mine, because I can talk about this stuff all day long. So first and foremost, for those of you I've either just now met or haven't met, I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you. And for those that I have seen many times, good to see you again. It has been a while. My name's Matt Erman, Director of Parks and Recreation. I've been with the city for 17 years now, in multiple assignments. I've been in this position now for almost 7 years. So has given me quite a bit of time to look through our current plan and kind of think forward and look at our updating of that plan. We are no longer a young city, and certainly this master plan is not young any longer. So, we need to start looking forward. So I'll dive right into this, and certainly if anybody has any questions or needs to stop me for anything, certainly feel free to do so, or we can wait till the end and I can open it up for discussion and questions towards the end. So with that, and of course my slide won't work. There we go. So let's start off with what we're going to do this evening. Honestly, I just want to give an opportunity to share with you a lot of the history and some of the looks forward and so forth, and then develop a process through which we can create an update. So I want to talk about the purpose for this update. At the very forefront, I think it's important to understand why we're doing what we're doing. A little bit of background of the existing plan and where it came from. The current plan and a little bit of an overview of the chapters therein, and talk a little bit about some of those highlights. And then talk a little bit about what we've done with this plan from an implementation standpoint and completion standpoint. It was a very lengthy plan with a lot of policies, a lot of action steps and so forth. So I just want to talk a little bit about the success story behind that. And then I want to take an opportunity to look ahead. When we start talking about trends and projections, if you were to ask me trends and projections 2 years ago, they would have been completely different from what they are tonight. So interestingly, we've got some stories behind that. And then for the bulk of discussion with the commission, I'd like to talk a little bit about the process through which we will update the existing plan. And really, I want to make sure, that this is a joint effort. This isn't, Matt Erman saying this is what we need to do. I've got recommendations, I've got ideas, but really this is a community-wide effort, and this is all for the community. And quite frankly, that's what I love to do. So we'll continue on that. So just a little bit of why we're doing this update. As you know, the city of Dublin and the Dublin Parks and Recreation System has been a combination of sound planning, policy formulated development, directives, and market product awareness. We take a lot of these things into account as we're trying to plan out this community. It's no different from our Parks and Recreation system. So the current Parks and Recreation Master Plan, as most every plan does, we need to understand the past, where we came from, recognize it. In some cases, don't repeat it, but in some cases, use it as a foundation on which we move forward. And then assessing the present, where are we today? How did we get here today? And then pivot along, envisioning the future. And as I mentioned, that's the hardest part of any plan, is thinking forward. It's the most fun part to me. The one thing that makes it challenging is everybody knows the future is uncertain. So that is the most difficult part. Another component of the purpose is many of you already know that we rely heavily on national standards and state standards through the National Recreation and Parks Association's Commission of Accreditation of Parks and Recreation Agencies. That's a mouthful, but really it is the National Association and the commission under that association that is in charge of making sure that the management system of each agency uses the best practices, providing quality improvement, assurance, and improvement. So each of the agencies have to meet national standards to qualify for that accreditation. And so, it holds the agency accountable to community needs and quality customer service, to name a few. It certainly increases operational efficiencies, which we have benefited from. And, it does require a substantial number of standards to meet. We have 154 standards that we have to abide by. 34 of those are fundamental standards. So all 34 fundamental standards have to be met. And then 80% of the 154 standards also have to be met to qualify for the accreditation status. Reaccreditation is required every 5 years, so you go through the same process every 5 years. And our Parks and Recreation Master Plan and Strategic Action Plan within are required to qualify as one of those 34 fundamentals, if not the most important one. Interestingly enough, we were supposed to be reaccredited last year, but due to the pandemic, we pushed it a year. They allowed us to push it a year because of the obvious things that everybody was going through. So next week, I will not be answering my phone. I will not be answering emails because we are getting our site visit next week and virtual site visit next week, and it'll be very intense. So wish us luck getting through that. So a little bit of background on the current master plan. Process began sometime in 2006. That's a little blurry at this point. Exactly when that started. But City Council adopted the final version of that plan in early 2010. It looks like it took a long time to get us through the process to develop that plan. Some of that was there was a lot going on, but a lot of that was that we have never done a Parks and Recreation master plan, certainly not to this level. We've done the community plan, which is the primary tool that we use as a community, but this Parks and Rec master plan complements what's in that community-wide plan. So, it took us a long time, including all of the stakeholders, residents, all of the boards and commissions and council, certainly staff. So it did take a while to get us there, but by and large, the product that we achieved in 2010 has been lifted up on a pedestal as one of the best master plans that many have seen. So we're pretty proud of that. Process was led by consultants. Most of these plans will be driven by consultants so that there's a neutral territory of facilitation. Consultants are trained in this and they know what to ask and they know whom to ask and get the right information to make sure that we're really hitting on all cylinders. So it was led by a group, depending on the level of need there. We've got 2 different companies there that helped us through that. And as I mentioned, it involved all the stakeholders, organizations, businesses, residents, focus group, City Council, Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission at the time. It is now the Community Services Advisory Commission. And then survey results and city staff. So a lot going on there in the process of the making of the existing plan. The plan includes 12 chapters. You can see each of the chapters there, and you can understand by just the topics alone how difficult or how big of a scope each one of these is. I mean, you look at each one of these topics, you can write a dissertation on each one of them. So trying to hone in on where we've been, where we are today, and then looking forward for each one of those things was quite the task. Interestingly, one of the things that came out of this was, we have been a city since 1988, 89. And as we like to say, for many years there, we were flying the plane as we were building it. And a lot of the things that we put into practice or into policy was not something of a vision from, a policy standpoint. It just was more of a reaction to a need. And so this master plan allowed us to pull all of these things in and actually formalize some of these policies so that we could really use not just formal policy, but city philosophy on the service levels and things that we provide. So it was a very good process for us to go through. So I'll go through each one of these chapters very briefly, just to talk a little bit about some of the things that are in these chapters. So the introduction is just talking about the evolution of the system, and what are the internal and external factors that were affecting, that system's evolution. So you can see those there, from civic leadership to public needs and regional markets, and maintaining the status quo on industry trends and things of that sort. It's very general. It's just an introduction to what we're looking at here in the city. Chapter 2 talks a little bit about the demographic, or a lot about the demographics, not just from a citywide perspective, but from a regional basis, through a national trend. One of the most important pieces of information to go into this, you've got to know who you're serving or who you will be serving based on those trends. So whether it's age, whether it's income, whether it's ethnicity, cultures, those kinds of things. As we know, the city has transformed into a lot of new types of cultures and ethnicities over the years, and we are a better city for it, and we have had to adapt to it quite a bit, and we will continue to need to do that. So organizational analysis was another one. I don't know if you knew this, since about 1997 to 2014, our Parks and Recreation department was not a department. We had each individual respective divisions representing each component of what you would typically find in what now is our Parks and Recreation department. From our recreation services, park operations, park development, volunteer resources, community engagement, and our community events. And these 5 different divisions were pretty much acting independent from each other, and there was a lot of duplication. And so there was a need for us to improve some of the efficiencies, enhance our customer service, and decrease duplications among many divisions. So over the years, there's been a lot of organizational structure modifications. And for one, in the last 6 years, we've made quite a substantial number, but we typically don't want to go all in and make those things all at once. We like to take chunks at a time to make sure it makes sense, and then continue down the road to make sure it's complementing others. So it's been quite a process over the many, many years. A Parks and Natural Resources inventory is an assessment that takes a look at the 2 components that guide land acquisitions, and then not just what those acquisitions look like from a parkland standpoint, but how are they associating the connection that's necessary to maintain the quality and quantity of that parkland. That could be from people connection, that could be wildlife corridors, it could be all kinds of different things that we need to take a look at to make sure we're hitting on all those cylinders. So that's basically what that chapter is about. In recreation services, as you all know, we provide, if there's a program out there, we provide it pretty much. And, from all ages to all abilities, to specialty programs and the like. And this chapter was important to us because when we talk about the level of service we provide in our recreation programming, it can be anywhere from our core general recreation program all the way up to some of the most elite types of opportunities, especially with some of our sports programs. So we had to formalize a level of service through which is dictated now that, our primary function is to provide services that the general recreation need. And, anything that is secondary or tertiary competition to that, or competitive nature or specialty in nature, it takes secondary to that primary level of need. It doesn't mean we don't value it. It doesn't mean we don't provide it, but we want to make sure we're meeting those general recreation services first before we accommodate those other service levels. And as you can imagine, I'm assuming many of you have had opportunities to participate in youth sports to a certain degree, and that can be very competitive, it can be very political, and it puts the city in a tight spot when we have capacity issues on fields and who takes those priorities. So as you can imagine, that could turn quite challenging. And then land acquisition specifically, interestingly enough, the national standard is 10 to 20 acres of land per 1,000 people. Dublin has about twice that per 1,000 residents. The city routinely averages over 90% satisfaction rate for what we provide in the way of that land, the design of the parks, the maintenance of the parks and open spaces. We're very proud of that satisfaction rate. And I am not allowed to be proud of that until we've hit that other 10%. We've got to find out where that is. So that's my job. And then, of course, the city strives to meet and exceed the public's expectations for parkland and acquisition. We've done a superb job over the years, and most recently down in the historic Dublin and downtown area, we've done some pretty amazing things down there lately. Natural resource management is the preservation and management of those resources. And, you know, we need to make sure that we have education efforts there, resource management practices and plans in place to make sure that we're managing them to those standards. And then we need to understand the further protection of resources to establish additional land to support the diversity that we have throughout the city. You know, a lot of our properties that we own aren't necessarily, a lot of people don't know we own some of these properties, but, you know, because a lot of people don't access them. They're not public parks, they're public property, such as, you know, riparian buffers and woodlots and wildlife corridors and greenways and waterways and things of that nature. And a lot of people don't get to explore those areas much, but they do exist and they're there for a reason, and they were done on purpose. So Parkland Development, our existing park inventory, we just really want to make sure we're hitting on all cylinders, making sure we provide a variety of the different development opportunities there from a recreation standpoint, from just a quality of life, aesthetics, and, you know, a lot of our right-of-way maintenance is included in that development as well. As you know, we have quite a bit of landscaping throughout the community, and it falls within this level as well. And then bikeway and pedestrian linkage. As you know, we've tried over the years to expand on our bikeways, providing more opportunities and enhancing the systems that we do have, identifying some of the gaps in those key connections. Years ago, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission and the CSAC, I think, went through this exercise of identifying some of these gaps so that we can expand our bike path system and then certainly those road sharing opportunities. So Dublin Art, Community Art Plan is quite substantial. One of the biggest things that we were able to finally get achieved from this was the Art in Public Places Master Plan. That was just approved by City Council maybe last month, 2 months ago. A major achievement in the accomplishments and things that we set out to achieve in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan itself. And public art is an important component of the city. It certainly impacts the lives of residents and visitors. I mean, I don't know how many times you see Dublin, Ohio on the map and you see the field of corn as its representative. And so it is an identifier, and it's certainly something that creates a place of community. And then our history. We certainly want to make sure that we are preserving our heritage, providing opportunities to educate and entertain with what our history has been, and create a cultural diversity of that history. We've got a significant number of generations before us and future generations to come, and we want to make sure that we're capturing all of that and making sure that it is something that can tell the story about the city. Park maintenance. Certainly the city has a lot of acreage to take care of in its 25 square miles. We want to make sure the number one, accessibility of safe park system. Everything we do is around safety. And I think a lot of you have access to our Go Dublin app, or we're a part of its creation. And one of the reasons for that Go Dublin app was real-time system through which we can understand what those needs are out in our parks that we're not able to catch up on it or missing it altogether. The chapter really does a good job of analyzing, our CIP, our capital budget, and, the funding mechanisms to track whatever those costs are. Now, one of the interesting things is, we do a lot of inventory in our parks and keeping track of all of our assets. One of the biggest assets we keep track of, or one of the most important, I should say, and challenging, are our playgrounds. We have 43 individual playgrounds in the city. And to put that into perspective, each one of those playgrounds is estimated somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000. So we've got over $12 million worth of playgrounds in the city. And we've got to put it on a rotational basis. When those warranties run out and parts run out, we've got to be prepared to replace that playground, because once it meets a certain low standard, we have to close it down based on what we know as the biggest liability, and that's kid safety. So we do a tremendous job with that. So I'll talk a little bit about the implementation of the existing plan. Each of those chapters that we just recently or just went through, they were broken down into specific policies and action steps, if you will. Out of all 12 chapters, we accumulated 92 action steps. And we then took those at a different priority level of high, medium, and low. And just to help you understand, those action steps weren't, just go put trash cans in these parks in these areas. It was more, we need a full-blown parks and recreation, or a full-blown natural resource management plan for the city of Dublin. I mean, those are the scope of these types of action steps. Some of them were a little bit easier than that, but many of them were that high level of scope. So you can see we broke those down into high priority, medium priority, and low priority. You can see the numbers there in the pie chart. And then if you take each one of those action steps by each chapter, this graph represents in the green, of each of those chapters, how many of those action steps have been completed. And then the black indicates some of those that are still in progress or will be ongoing regardless of their completion. So that takes us to about an 88% or 88 completed action steps, which is a 92% completion rate of the master plan itself. 8% are still in progress or ongoing. And so we're very proud of these statistics. A lot of people, a lot of agencies, organizations will create these master plans and they'll put them on a shelf. And we did not want it to sit on a shelf. We actually wanted to create this implementation measurement to make sure that we actually implemented the policies that were within it. So for the fun part, looking ahead, I mentioned that, if we were to start this update 2 years ago and we would have completed it in a year, in start of 2020, we would have to start all over again because of the pandemic that hit us in so many ways, and it pivoted us on so many levels to be able to accommodate and provide the services under the restrictions that were in front of us. And a lot of the changes that came out of this pandemic, they're likely to be here for some time, and some of them will never go away. So we need to understand what that looks like and start preparing for some of that. So a lot of that means is, we've got a lot of non-traditional operation plans for festivals, recreation centers, aquatics facilities, camps, and programs. And most of that is with social distancing exercises. Some of that is logistics and operations with taking temperatures and wearing masks and all of the different protocols that we have in place. But, the operational plans have just become very non-traditional. We've had to adapt all along the way. That's not going to change. And then revenue production, we have seen a dramatic reduction in revenue. And most agencies, us included, are going to have to reimagine some of our revenue production because of our operating plans and participation ratios being so impacted. And then, of course, the outcome of this pandemic, unfortunately, we need to establish a stronger orientation toward health and social services, engaging the community. Christine Ardecchia does a fantastic job getting out and making sure that she understands exactly what those needs are, connecting people to the services and making sure that people have what they need. And, this is something that is probably longer term than we would hope. There's a lot of substance abuse issues out there and other health issues and mental health issues and so forth that are going to be in need. So, and certainly we've got the remote working environment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this stuff in a little bit more detail, a little bit more exciting type of look ahead. So first and foremost, let's take a look at some of the technology impacts. When we start thinking about what people use parks for, those traditional uses of parks are going to be the same, but park-based design is going to need to change to promote new social behaviors. Some of those being connectivity. Some of those might be pocket parks with, you know, web access and phone chargers or device chargers and things where people can hold meetings outside or can just use the outside as their office space. Thinking a little bit ahead about some of the maintenance equipment. There are a lot of new technologies out there, some of which are electronic based versus combustible engines or combustible engine use. And then certainly we're looking at some of the autonomous maintenance equipment out there. We're not as far along as some of the agricultural farming equipment is. They've got a little bit more of an open space and don't have to worry about too many people and trees and things in their way, but the technology is coming around for potentially some autonomous mowers and things of that sort. And then we're looking at downloadable content will be everywhere, and people will expect it to be everywhere. If you've seen some of these articles about augmented reality games, there's a lot of non-traditional recreation that can happen with those things. There are, you know, rooms that are now set up so you can actually participate in, let's say, a Star Wars fight with Darth Vader. And, you know, you're part of the team to try to take him out. And everybody's running around the room and it looks like everybody's going to run into each other. But in reality, what they're looking at is exactly what they're expecting to be in that movie. So it's kind of cool that they can get some of the exercise and create some relationships and things in an augmented way. Certainly our playgrounds, all of them are going to be interactive someday. You won't just be climbing around on a physical structure. That physical structure will actually react to you. It might know who you are. You can probably program it to do different things while you're there and get different experiences from those playgrounds. And then we can do some virtual walks and different exhibits and things throughout a lot of our parks in a downloadable content kind of a way. And we're no stranger to virtual programming anymore. You know, virtual programming was on our radar maybe 5 or 6 years out. We had been starting to look at some of the technologies, but when 2020 hit and we had to figure out a way to keep people active, we had to pivot, and we pivoted quickly to try to make sure we had access to everybody and everybody had access to, you know, some of that physical programming that we have in our fitness areas. And then certainly other new and non-traditional forms of recreation are going to come out of a lot of these technologies that we need to start planning for. If anybody has kids or grandkids that like to play games on their video machines and so forth, you may have heard of esports. Esports is a formed tournament-based online gaming system where people compete, and they don't just compete for fun. Some of these competitions can earn them up to millions of dollars if they win these competitions on a worldwide basis. There's actually professional coaching that people can secure to teach themselves or kids on how to be a better gamer. There is a projected audience above 600 million worldwide by 2023. That's incredible. There are currently 170 schools offering scholarships in the millions. And, you know, when we look at this type of an activity, this is certainly not something that I got into this profession for. I'm too old to be thinking like this when I got in. I like the outdoors and I like to be active. I was very sports oriented, and you know, I was a very traditionalist when I started thinking about parks and recreation. But you take a look at some of these new things out there, they do actually provide a form of very positive form of recreation. It's pandemic friendly. You know, it does develop social skills, albeit different from the ones that I probably grew up with. You have a network of people and friends and social bonds and friendships that you develop from these. So it does create teamwork opportunities for people to compete alongside each other. So you know, this is one of the things we're really looking at. It is a very large up and coming program that we could easily offer within our own city here. So if you think about the remote working and office spaces and so forth, with the inventories that we have, with the opportunities we have for not needing as much bricks and mortar. We don't need the parking lots because autonomous vehicles are going to pick us up from our home on their way in, picking up 3 other people to drop us off wherever we need to go. Nobody's going to need to park their car because nobody's going to own cars. I'm dreaming ahead. Please don't take this literally. But, you know, these are the kinds of things that are going around in our minds right now. You know, this is an opportunity for potentially available parkland. If you think about, you know, office spaces, parking garages, parking lots, and things of that, they could be converted into indoor recreational amenities, or they can be opened up to athletic fields or other parkland opportunities of nature preserves and things like that. So certainly, you know, modifying our indoor recreational activities. You know, our recreation center has not had, you know, a wedding or bar mitzvah or, you know, any large gathering for, you know, over a year now. And so are we going to need to modify that and not get rid of it, but use it for different things that we can actually activate again? And then certainly athletic field space, as I mentioned, is an opportunity with the reduced bricks and mortar. So some of our local opportunities here is expanding our virtual programming, repurposing some of our recreation amenities, our festival planning and park design, community outreach and engagement. Certainly our diversity and inclusion awareness is on the forefront, and anticipated a potential parkland acquisition. Regional partnerships, this is one that I am excited about. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of collaboration, but if you can imagine the opportunities we may have to create recreation districts or park districts with multiple municipalities here locally. If I think of between here and Marysville, all of that developable land and farmland that's going to be developed eventually, it's an opportunity for us to potentially partner with all these municipalities that are in need of, you know, land to use for different purposes, and creating that public partnership, and even in some cases a private public partnership. And certainly we are really starting to look much at our citywide philanthropic opportunities. As you all know, our Dublin Irish Festival is heavily subsidized by support from businesses and organizations around the community on a monetary and in-kind type of service. And we're looking at expanding that a little bit to see if we can't find that alternative revenue generation for the loss of revenues that we would typically see in our recreational programming. So a little bit about the process going forward, and this is where you all come in. You know, I feel as though the big picture stuff here is we need to assess our current inventories, go through and measure our service delivery, identify our programs, where are our gaps, conduct an analysis, identify alternative providers, and, you know, certainly take a look at our CIP development. It's important as we get more and more product of amenities, we need to make sure our CIP is built to support in the maintenance capacity as well. And we need to engage the community and the staff. Our staff is an important component of this, but the community is the one who is the driver. We can certainly provide recommendations and thought processes, but, you know, it really comes down to the community. So there's a whole series of things that we will probably need to do in order for us to understand a little bit more about, you know, what is it that the community is looking for. Certainly conducting a needs assessment, you know, assessed our findings from the community needs, short and long-term trends and projections, some of those things I just mentioned to you. What remains relevant and irrelevant. I think it's very important for us to go through this plan today and find out which category each of these falls in. Organizational assessment, is it still accommodating what we're trying to set out to do? Our financial implications of those findings. There's certainly going to be resources needed to make all of those things happen. So alternative funding opportunities is another option for those needs assessments. And then develop an implementation plan. I think it's very important that if you set out a plan, you need to set up a strategy to execute it. So certainly establishing all of these assignments and defining the measure of success, we need to be able to tell the story at the end. So going forward, let me look backwards for a second here. This went before council, who later deferred it or referred it to the Public Services Committee and to the Community Services Advisory Commission. I started with Public Service Committee to kind of pick their brain a little bit about what messages to send to this commission about, going forward. And I will say that they're very supportive of us moving forward. I think they're excited to take a look ahead. And I think that they really want to take a good hard look at where we are today and put together a recommendation going forward. So our job is to explore the various topics for the update, identify some of the components and certainly the project scope of what that update looks like, what types of budget implications there may be. If we do this internally, which is going to be a very time-consuming thing, not that it's not regardless, or it could be consultant driven. And anytime you bring in a consultant, it's going to increase the budget for the project. Not to say that one's better than the other, it's just determining which one is the most effective. Certainly we need to propose a timeline. My suggestion right now is that we work through all of this. We talk through the existing plan. We have discussion about these topics. And, I'm looking at us proposing sending a recommendation back to the committee and certainly to council with, the possibility of putting this into the 2022 operating budget as a starting point. And then that gives us, the rest of this year to really take a harder look into where we are, and we'll be better suited to carry it forward from that point. So I'm looking at the 2022 operating funding request as part of that. And then certainly in 2022, we start to initiate the update. So then we'd be off to the races. So I'll stop there, and I'll just, listen to you all for a second, answer questions you may have. And if you've got any thoughts, or if you'd like to hear recommendations of what I think we should consider going forward, I'd be happy to provide that as well. But I'm here for you all, so I'll turn it over to you, Steve, and back to the commission.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I'll start off with some questions, and then people could follow up with me or with Matt. I was just kind of curious. This was early in your presentation. You said Dublin has 34 acres per 1,000 residents or park space. I'm just curious, relative to Central Ohio, what municipality has the highest? Or is that Dublin?
Wow, I would say probably between Westerville and Dublin, but I think we have we definitely have more parks. I don't know about the comparison of the acreage. There's a difference between quantity and quantity of parks or quantity of number of acres and quantity or number of parks. I mean, those two things can be quite different. But most of our parks are neighborhood parks, small in size. And our community parks are much larger, and they're all programmed differently. Westerville is set up fairly similar, but I don't think they have as much acreage nor the number of parks we do. I can look that up though if you'd like.
I'm just curious. If you don't know, that's fine. You mentioned regional partnerships, and that brought to mind Metro Park. Isn't that a regional partner?
Yes, we do partner with them on occasion. As you know, Glacier Ridge was actually purchased by the city for the purpose of the Glacier Ridge Metro Park to exist. So there was that partnership there to make sure that we had that property secured through them. And then we partnered with them on the idea of their, if you've been out to their park recently, their new obstacle course on the northern end of their park.
No.
And they've recently built a new dog park out in that same park. It's a fairly large dog park, and we were in need of a new one, but everybody wanted one. They just didn't want it in their backyard. So Metro Parks was a good alternative for that. It's fairly large. It's over 2 acres. It includes lawn area, and it's in a wooded area as well. So a lot of shade and different opportunity.
So it would seem to me, relative to regional partnerships, it seems like Metro Park should take the lead in that. I mean, it seems like they're best positioned.
Yeah, I think it depends on what we want to use the properties for. If we're trying to secure it for preservation and or natural programming and things a little bit closer to home to metro parks, I think you're right. If we're looking at potential athletic fields that could accommodate the large number of youth athletes that we have in this region, that might be a different partnership. But you're right.
Okay. Anyone have questions? If not, I got a couple more.
Yeah, I had a couple of comments. Matt, my wife and I have been here in family about 25 years, and just want to thank you for the amazing work that the Parks and Recreation team has done. They're so responsive. Just for example, in our neighborhood, well, I think it was last summer, a big storm hit and a tree came down on the tennis court, crushing the fence. The next day, I mean, they were out there, totally cleaned it up, and as good as new. That's how responsive your team is there. So I wanted to thank you for that. And then I wanted to ask if there could be a couple of things for just for consideration, just recommendations. One is like on a short-term basis as a tennis player. I was wondering, Matt, what the team looks at in terms of putting up the wood boards, the boards that are up over at Llewellyn Farms for practicing against the wood wall. If you're playing individually as a tennis player, believe it or not, there's a wait list over there sometimes, people waiting around to use that board. And I think it's the only one in Dublin. There's one at Muirfield. But would there be ever consideration of placing something like that over at a tennis facility that would be not in a community, but more like at Dublin, at the tennis courts there, where it wouldn't really bother anybody with the noise? So I just put that out there as a short-term amenity that might be easy to do and not that expensive.
Yeah, that subject has come up. So has our racquetball enthusiasts, people all throughout the community have been very vocal on their desires and wants and so forth. Tennis was very hot there for quite a while, and since it has dropped off, and pickleball has picked up tremendously. We have a very active pickleball group. As you know, our courts that have just gone in front of the Justice Center, we can't get them open soon enough, trust me. But we are anticipating a few more tennis courts over there. We're looking at putting in platform tennis as a request over there. And I'm sure there are areas elsewhere that we could accommodate some of the single player types of things where people just want to go out and practice their own, swing and serve and so forth.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of feedback that we need to engage the community, and sometimes the loud voices are not the majority. And it's very difficult for us to gauge what the actual needs of the community are. We rely heavily on our satisfaction surveys, and we sneak in questions like that of, if we were to add new recreational amenities, what would they be, to gauge if things are shifting one way or the other. And we do see that from time to time. But when we see a grassroots effort similar to what we're seeing right now with pickleball, we move rapidly, because this isn't just a Dublin phenomenon. This is a national and worldwide phenomenon right now that we don't see going away. So we have to evaluate, is it a fad? But we can build courts, we can build these wooden walls, we can do those things very easily, very inexpensively. and we can turn them around and reuse them for something else if they're not used, or, you know, just tear them out and start over with something else. It's not like it's, bricks and mortar coming out of the ground. It's not that expensive. So, you know, I'd love to hear more about the interest. And, you know, that's, I tell a lot of people that, you know, I can tell you what I want in Dublin, and I can build the best of anything I want in Dublin, but that's not my job.
Very helpful. I'll pass to others. I did have another follow-up one too, but I'll pass right now to others.
But I think to your point, Jim, just so I don't discount what you're saying here, I'd like to get a packaged type of facilitated discussion with the community around racket sports, whether that's indoor, outdoor, tennis, pickleball. We've got cricket out there now that's quite popular. These all require space that we either don't have or we need to start making sure we do have. So to your point, I'd like to learn more about what that big package looks like. What does that pie look like? Just so we can understand that.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Any other questions before? Jim, why don't you ask your follow-up, and then I'll ask a couple more.
Well, you kind of put it right on the spot there, Matt, when you referenced racquetball, because that was going to be my second suggestion from a long-term perspective. And as you said, the overall package is, I know what we're going to be looking at doing, but I'll just put my 2 cents in there right now. And that when you look at Premier racket facility, which I was a member of, and probably about 100 of us were vibrant racquetball players. And when that shut down over through COVID, you know, we all just sort of scattered. No one's really playing in any one spot. You know, Lifetime has a couple of courts and that kind of thing. So I was just going to put out the suggestion for long term that if, as you said, any kind of repurposing of space to have a number of tennis or racquetball courts would be definitely a profit center, because there's about 100 of us that are looking for places to play right now. And to get the leagues, you know, we have leagues just like the badminton, just like the pickleball. There's a group of us out there. We're not very vocal, but they're out there. And even the idea of the 3-wall outdoor racket location, you know, for racquetball, that's a little easier to put together in a parking lot almost. So, I mean, those definitely would be things that'd be great to put in the package. So.
Yeah, thanks for that. We can include that in there. We looked hard at racquetball when we designed the recreation center, and when we even renovated, we looked at it. And at the time, we had way too many members for us to accommodate a very good experience for people. Lifetime Fitness came along, and we were not unhappy about that, because it took the pressure off of us to have to build another recreation center. But we looked at racquetball, and at the time we wanted to make sure that we were using every square foot of the rec center to accommodate the number of people we need to accommodate. And as you know, racquetball is a fairly large space indoors that only accommodates 1 or 2 people. So it's difficult, but I get your point. But outdoor, we can certainly take a look at that.
Great, thanks.
Hey,
Matt,
I'm sorry. Can I have a question? I think you can follow up in a bit. This first one, I really wanted to check on. You know, from your presentation, you mentioned about looking forward, like the video games thing. Can you brief something about what exactly the Parks and Recreation can do, or what is your vision on that one?
Well, as everyone knows, teenagers are probably the most difficult clientele we have to connect with. And we do everything we can to try to program everything we can for them for a lot of different reasons, for most of those being obvious. And we've even gone so far as bringing in some of the tight-knit teenagers throughout the community and have them design the programs that they want us to provide. Because anytime you start figuring out what they want and then you provide it, well, they've already moved on to something else. So we were chasing them down the road everywhere we went. So, you know, when esports, when the phenomenon started to really hit in video games, it was years ago. I wish I would have capitalized on this earlier, but, you know, I started thinking to myself, in the Parks and Recreation world, we as professionals, our job is to get people off of the couch, get them out from under their devices, and get them engaged in social and physical and developmental types of activities. So that was always ingrained in our effort. And technology started creeping into our ability to do that to a scope that we weren't going to compete with it. And I started talking about us as a profession. We need to flip this, and we need to start using technology to our advantage to get them engaged, to get them developed, to get them, physically active. That's, where all of these things start to come in. And esports doesn't do all of that. But if you figure, I'm just going to throw this out there, the Talas in the recreation center. We could host a tournament of teenagers through esports that is connected to another tournament, let's just say regionally in Westerville, that's connected in Worthington. And so suddenly you've got all of these entities that have a hub where all of these kids engage and they participate in these tournaments. And they are so engaged in this, and they're watching each other play these, and who fails and who succeeds and who moves on, and they're cheering each other on. And this could be all housed in the recreation center. It could be a huge profit margin. And then when I start talking about the public or the professional coaching that goes along with that, then you start developing a mentorship for these kids. And so if you start reimagining some of the traditional recreational opportunities, that's really kind of what I was, alluding to, that, you could take this to a whole different level. Certainly not necessarily the physical aspect of it, but.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just have one more, just not in this one, but I think I noticed something. Our previous commission members, worked hard to get our commission name in the Healthy Dublin magazine. But I just noticed, I think spring the 2021, the latest one don't have our name on it. So I just thought, okay, I'll bring it up to you. I looked at it online, but I didn't have a hard copy. Probably I'll just check. So
I think I
something
saw our name in there, I thought.
Yeah, we are in there.
yeah, okay, in the spring one? Okay.
Yeah.
The latest one? Okay.
I was kind of
sorry.
surprised. Kind of
Okay,
think
I keep seeing it, but I see the last one I didn't pay attention. Probably I should do that thing. Yeah, I'm sorry if it's out there, so don't worry.
I think, Vivek, what you're talking about is you want a whole front page. Is that what you're pictures, cover?
We wish we'll put Steve's one on the top and we are on the background. So
Put it on our refrigerator.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay,
Hey,
that's
Matt,
fine.
I got a couple questions more. Relative to the rec center and the pools, and you went through a master plan, that's just like interspersed, or they consider jewels of the city and have their own sub chapters? It didn't seem like you highlighted them too much as far as, Parks and Rec. I'm just curious about your comments.
When we, not necessarily in the master plan, does it pull out all of those as a showcase type of facility? I will say we did a subset study back in 2014. I think it was 2014, where we did a recreational amenity study for the community, and it was taking all of our amenities within Dublin. That included a recreation center, all the pools, and all the picnic shelters, tennis courts, basketball courts, baseballs, all of these things, and we inventoried them. And then we compared that with the usage of each as we could measure it. And then we took a look at what other amenities were being offered by the private sector, what other types of amenities were being offered regionally that gave access. So, it wasn't necessarily pulled out in the master plan, which is, now that you bring it up, fairly interesting, but it did require us, a few years just after the master plan got created for us to go in and say, well, wait a minute, time out here. We need to do a really strong inventory and analysis of what we have and what we're using. So I think it was a derivative of the plan. It wasn't necessarily in the plan.
And as far as the north, is it the north pool that's being renovated or rebuilt? Was that part of the master plan, or was that like a separate initiative?
That was not part of the master plan. It was part of our assessment of the facility over time.
Okay.
And that park or the pool was built in 1988. And over the years, as many of you all may know, it was built and quilted together and reimagined, re-engineered, and we had a lot of things done with it. And it reached a point where it was going to cost us more to repair it than it was to tear it down and start over. And so, we pulled it along as long as we probably pushed it along a little bit farther than we should have. But it was more of a product of time and, physical decay.
Okay. And I guess while I have the floor here, I'm going to ask my last question, and then I'll turn it back to Jim. Because you mentioned our bike pass or our common use pass. I'm not sure the exact proper term, but what's your thoughts on motorized vehicles, either being gas powered or electric, using those shared paths?
I think that's one of the things that we need to reassess. And the original ruling on that was based on, motorcycles, mini bikes, mopeds, and things that were fairly high speed in nature. And we've got some of these e-bikes out there and e-scooters out there now that might be a little bit more regulated or potentially more regulated, that we may want to revisit that. I think if we used this shared use pass system as a method by which we transport ourselves around this community, we probably see fewer cars on the road. And not everybody is really able to ride a bike that far. So, I think it's, a different day and age now today than it was even 10 years ago. So I think that's something we could easily revisit.
Okay.
How was that for a diplomatic answer?
Steve, I wanted to jump in real quick too, just so I didn't lose this thought. I believe that topic might be discussed at the Public Service Committee on May 3rd as well. I know it's something that this commission has discussed and has taken on as a topic. And, when you all brought forward your recommendation to council, like 2 years back, that COVID year just sort of seems to skip you a little bit. But yeah, a couple years ago, your recommendation, if you recall too, was to continue to consider this moving forward, not to just put it to bed, but to continue to bring it up every couple of years to make sure that, we are making sure that we are prepared to accommodate, mobility devices, I guess it would be a good term to use as things evolve here within the community and the region and beyond. So let me do some quick follow-up on that one, so that I just want to make sure everyone on the commission's aware. If that is a topic, you have the opportunity to sort of tune into that meeting, and it will be live streamed if you don't have an opportunity to attend. I don't know how in depth they'll have a chance to get in on that topic. I know that they have, I think, 2 hours on those meetings, and I know there are a lot of topics to be addressed at that specific meeting. So I'll be interested to see how in the weeds they get on that. But just for your awareness, I do believe that will probably be addressed at some level at that meeting here in May.
Okay. Thank you. Jim, you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to ask Matt, I know the east side of the river, the whole park area, that you have kind of envisioned it being sort of a blank slate where different venues would come in and such and be entertaining. I mean, is that a role that we'll play to sort of gather suggestions on what might be good for that area, or is that, how do you kind of envision that rolling out?
I've got staff tasked with researching a lot of other areas that are similar to what we have downtown to understand not just the types of events that they get applications for or types of permits they issue, but I'm looking in the manner of understanding the resources that are necessary to accommodate those things. We only have limited capacity, so we need to understand how we allocate our resources. Our police department is a very key point of every event we have. So we're working very closely with them to understand what their limitations are, our staff limitations, from our parks operations to street operations, and certainly from funding level. How do we fund these? And some of the municipalities or entities that organize these types of events and so forth have a revenue production. And so I've asked staff to really research that hard. We haven't really gotten very as far as I'd like to have gotten a lot. And we blame this on 2020. I mean, our staff had been working around the clock on other things, but we're thinking about these things, and fortunately or unfortunately, we don't have to worry about any large size things down there soon. And the reason I say that is, you're seeing the plaza work come along very quickly, and those plazas will be opened up here hopefully by late summer. And the upper plaza will certainly be open hopefully next month. It's ready to go. I just want to get the construction out of the way a little bit more. But we've got all that lawn area out there, and I want to make sure that when we get that lawn seeded, that it has time to establish and get set for a pretty heavy usage. So we're going to restrict a lot of that usage down there until we get that. So we're looking at 2022 time frame for those types of things. But to answer your question, CSAC did take a look at our event policy and how we apply different permit levels to certain types of events. We have a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Each one of them have criteria to meet or not meet. It goes through a rigorous process internally for us to even consider, would we even consider doing it? But I think this commission might be able to get involved with our permitting policy down there, because it's going to be a little bit different from everywhere else we have in the city. So I'm anticipating, for instance, we'll have a one-person entertainer, a busker that might be on site that has a permit to do something. We're not going to charge them for that. It's just, yes, you have a permit, go do it. But if we have a series of actors, for instance, that want to do a pop-up play on the plaza, that's going to require some more in-depth types of understanding and so forth. So there's just a whole lot of factors involved with this. It is very interesting as we go through this.
Thanks.
Any other questions from anyone?
I have one more just for Matt, maybe comments. Like this is regarding the cleanup on in February storms. I think they have a back-to-back storm on last year. I think I received a lot of complaint through the neighborhood, they didn't clean the drive. I mean, bike path or for a long time. I think they let it happen just to melt it out on that. And usually, I know your team. Usually, as Jim mentioned, your team is usually good. It's not only just City of Dublin, I believe. I think some of the HOA did not do either, because I live in Muirfield. They never cleaned it for a long time. So is there anything? This looks odd to me, but I was wondering, is there anything related to the COVID budget cut or resource failure? Or you never received any complaint about it?
No, I don't have an answer for you. There's no reason why it shouldn't have been cleaned up.
Okay.
We have not short-sighted our services, and certainly not our standards. So if you're seeing that Go Dublin app will come in handy if you
Okay, I'll let it do it next time, because last time, sometime I run too in the winter, but instead of running on the bike path, I run on the road, so it takes.
Well, we have our crew goes through and inspects those bike paths as regularly as they can. We've got the bike ambassador program. They're out there, they're inspecting and noting things. And during the winter months, we have some contract work that goes along those bike paths and cuts back some of that brush to keep it that way. That's a lot cheaper contract to get in the wintertime than it is during the peak season. So it could have been a contractor, it could have been just an oversight, it could have been something we forgot. I just don't know. I don't have an answer for you, unfortunately, but we know where it is, we can fix it.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Hey, Vivek, just
Yeah.
a quick follow-up question with that too. Are you talking about like snow specifically or
Right.
just sort of debris? Because
No,
with the
the snow.
okay, because with the snow removal, that's I guess a different type of conversation. Matt, I don't know if you're probably able to speak to our process a little bit easier. Jay is probably really the best one to talk about that one, but
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about tree removal and brush and stump
No, I'm
removal.
sorry
But
about
if
it.
it's
Yeah, this
snow,
is only
sorry.
snow. Yeah.
Okay, so snow, we have priority snow removal for our bike paths, and um, it depends on the type of snow we get. It could be ice. It depends on how deep of snow we get. It depends on what day of the week we get it. As you can imagine, our priorities are the schools and making sure those paths near the schools are opened up. And then certainly down in historic Dublin and places where more pedestrian traffic is prominent. And some of the tertiary areas, some in the back in the suburb areas, in the subdivision areas, sometimes it takes us forever to get there. We have, I don't know how many, I think it's some 53 miles of bike paths that we do clear in a snowstorm. And, sometimes we just can't get to all of it. So, we were struggling this year with, I don't know if you noticed the layering of the snows and how it snowed and then it rained and then it froze and then it snowed again. And when you get that multiple layer stuff in there, our machinery is struggling with that. So usually it's not like us just breezing down the pathway and getting through it. It's like a icebreaker going through there.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you. But anyhow, your team is doing a great job. So I just
Well, I
noticed this
appreciate
one
it.
this year. Thank you.
And this helps us so we can better inform and educate. So if there are questions out there, we'll certainly answer them as best we can.
Thanks.
just really quickly too, Vivek, just it's funny that you brought this topic up because I mentioned the public service committee meetings earlier about an upcoming meeting, but at their previous meeting last week, I think shoot, Matt, I know you were there, but I can't remember what day it was, Tuesday or Wednesday. I ran the live stream, so I should know. But they took on, there's this 2035 framework that is something that the city and city council and staff and leadership and the entire city is sort of working on and starting to dive into a little bit. And the Public Services Committee of Council is tasked with the infrastructure pillar of that framework. And they did an exercise at their last meeting where it was just they sort of worked through with the consultant that's helping facilitate some of the discussions and throw out sort of big ideas for what they'd like to see by 2035 from an infrastructure standpoint. Just something, if there were no barriers and cost wasn't an issue and all these things, what would you love to see happen? And then the idea is that you start to back into some of these things and figure out what's feasible, what could happen, and those types of things. But I can't remember who it was that brought it up, but their big idea was, when you think about roadways, bike paths, shared use paths, is there a way to be innovative about how those are cleared so that the infrastructure itself is responsible for clearing it? So like heated shared use paths, and are there ways to go about that? And so that was interesting. And I only say all this to say, not to imply that any of you have lots of free time outside of our meetings and your regular daily lives here, but if you do have the opportunity, these 2035 conversations have been really interesting. And so if you want to go back, all of these meetings are live streamed and the videos are out there, and they've been interesting conversations. So if you all have any interest in any of that, I think you'd enjoy some of the discussion that's been had within those.
How do we get those,
Okay,
Nick?
thank you.
I'll send you the link to the Public Services Committee, and then I'll send you a link to, there's got to be a web page that just has all the committee meetings, I would think, and you should be able to dig through the agendas. And if you find an agenda that has 2035 in there, you could just hop in and click through their live
I think
stream and
all of
see
them
some
have
of the
2035 on them.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know that you can get one that doesn't have 2035 at this point.
Yeah, just go to the city council page and it'll show all the meetings on there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
So Matt, if we look at specific next steps with CSAC, where do you see our next steps being at this point?
Well, I think what I would like to entertain is the idea of really going through each chapter and breaking each chapter down from, let's read through the chapter as a homework assignment and come back to the meeting with a series of questions. And let's go through the action steps and the policies that were derived from those chapters. And let's categorize them. Are these relevant? Are they future related? Or is there something we need to spin off and do something differently? And, those three categories, we don't have to answer, what we're going to do, but is this old? Is this need to be refreshed? Is this something that needs to move forward? Let's categorize these in a fashion that we at least understand the scope of the work that we're looking for. And I would imagine if we all read through the chapters between each meetings, we could probably get through all 12 chapters in, let's say, 3 meetings. Let's say we tackle 4 chapters a meeting. And so that would be my recommendation. And then let's take, let's do that exercise, take a 10,000 foot layer look and see, what did we learn from doing this and where do we see this going? And, I think we can talk through that as a group and then, taking the next step from there. I hate to say where I think it will go. I mean, I have an idea just because I'm very familiar with the plan, but I'm only one person. I'd love to get different perspectives on that. And I think it'd be a great exercise for this commission as well, just to give your insight and perspective back to city council, whether that be at the committee level or the council as a whole.
Anyone have any comments about Matt's proposal?
I think it's a great idea. Be happy to help.
Okay, that's great. So with Christine on our agenda next month, so this is something to start in June? Drew, or Nick? I guess I'm looking at Nick.
Yeah, we can, and we'll work with Matt to figure out what works best for them and is most feasible. And if Matt needs to be here in June, we can figure it out. Like I said, with Christine's, it's an opportunity for you all to sort of, and I think it'll be helpful in informing some of the ongoing discussions that you all have, to hear from Christine and her team about the work they've done over the last year. But we can be, Christine's flexible and we can be flexible with her as well. And, especially, if we come forward with something that Matt brings us, we can fit both in as well and split Christine's presentation up over, 2 meetings as well. So we'll work with Matt and figure out what schedule makes the most sense for him and what he needs to, when he needs to be here, he'll be here, and we'll make sure that we make that happen.
Yeah, I would just ask for some lead time for the members so we could actually have time to read this material and do an adequate job. Is it, I assume it's out on our website, the city's website, the master plan?
Yeah, I'll send you a link to the plan.
Okay,
And then as we prepare for these meetings, before each meeting, what I'll do is I'll create, let's just say I'll just call it a survey. We'll go through each of the action steps in the chapter and you can mark whether it's relevant, not relevant, or something we need to do differently. And then you can put it in one of those 3 categories. We can come to the meeting, have a quick dialogue. What did everybody put down there? And have a discussion of where we want it to go from there, and then keep moving on. That's kind of my thought. That way we have most of the work cut out in front of us, and then it's just a matter of discussion and see where we want to push it.
would it make any sense to get our feedback a couple of days before the CSAC so it could be compiled and we can look at it as a whole versus individually?
I'll leave that up to the commission. I don't want to put so much work on you all that, you don't have lives like the,
Hey, Steve, maybe the first go around, we just do it at the meeting, but if we find it to be cumbersome, we would
Okay.
switch over and go to something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And that way we know we're on the same page moving forward too. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Very good idea. Thank you, Jim.
Great.
Okay, anything else for Matt while we're on the subject? Okay, if not, well, thank you, Matt, for joining us, and we look forward to our moving together, moving forward with you.
You bet. My pleasure. And thank you all so much for my time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, going back to the agenda, is there other items of interest? Anything anybody wants to bring up? If not, then I guess we're coming to a close. Our next meeting would be May 11th.
That's correct.
With that, if there's no other comments, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, and we'll see you in 30 days or so.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Everyone,
Thanks.
appreciate your participation. Bye-bye.
Bye.